Hi everyone, Tim Kitzer with you, the voice of NBA Jam. From top journalists and authors to rising influencers and insiders, Hoopsology brings you the voices driving basketball forward. With elite guests and sharp analysis, Matt, Justin, and Alan keep you plugged into everything hoops. From downtown, boom shakalaka.
He is the author of Memorial Coliseum, 75 years as monument, stage, and arena. We have the pleasure in welcoming Kevin Cook onto Hoopsology. Welcome, Kevin.
Hey, welcome. I really appreciate you having me.
Thanks for coming on to the show. Truly appreciate it. Before we delve into the book, we have a bit of a tradition on our show.
All right.
So take this question any way you want it. What is your first or favorite basketball memory?
First or favorite basketball memory? Well, I would fit that in with the book, and that was watching an old American Basketball Association game between the Kentucky Colonels and the Utah Stars, and that was spring of 1975. Moses Malone was a first-year player for the Stars. He had just, I believe, the first high school player ever to come out. I got his autograph at that game. He signed it on a piece of paper I got out of my mom gave me from her purse, just a scrap piece of paper, very old school. He then turned it over and signed it again on the back. For whatever reason, I don't know. So I have two autographs from Moses Malone.
Nice. You still have them currently?
Yes, I do. Yes.
That's awesome. I want to jump into the book and just what was the origin story of how you got involved? And then can you take our audience into just the creation process in terms of any hurdles that you encountered, and then to the final product is basically from start to finish.
Yeah. Well, it started with, there's a book that precedes this one, and that was a history of all of the arenas that UK basketball men's have played at. So it went back about 100 years, and it went from a little gym called Alumni Gym, then to what was the first mega arena in the South, which was Memorial Coliseum, and then their move into Rupp Arena, where they play today. So I did that history. It took about 3 years to do it, and it was kind of a lot of words, very few pictures. And when I got done, I realized a few things. One, that a major renovation was going to happen in Memorial Coliseum, which was the middle arena where what the old timers remember as the mecca of UK basketball. It was also going to be the 75th anniversary of Memorial Coliseum coming up. And they were also going to rededicate it as a war memorial. That's where the word memorial comes from. Originally, it was built after World War II to honor, it was almost 10,000 Kentuckians that died in World War II. So it was a state memorial to World War II. And over time, they've rededicated it to Marines, Navy, sailors, and soldiers that have died in subsequent conflicts, Korean War, Vietnam War, up to today in the Middle East and the Gulf. And so those three things sort of prompted me. I'm a Navy veteran. I wanted to make it known the background of the memorial part of this arena. I wanted to have a lot of pictures. I wanted to be an illustrated history that I wasn't able to do in the previous book, which was more of a general history. And then make it big, words that I didn't even, some of the sort of oddball things that have gone on in the arena. So it's sort of a celebration. I think the folks that would be attracted to it are, military veterans, anybody interested in college basketball, particularly Kentucky, and even architecture. It's a beautiful building. And then the renovation they did just recently kept a lot of the history but made it updated to where it can go another 75 years. I think, can't remember the second part of your question, but I don't know if I covered that all.
Yeah, you did. You mentioned with this arena, it's also a memorial. How does it balance kind of dual identities? Because I don't know if there's any other arena in the country that's maybe like this one. I'm not exactly sure, but it's the first of an arena like this one that kind of serves two purposes at once. So can you just talk about that dual identity?
Well, it's the university and the state have taken that very seriously. There are other memorials, even Vanderbilt has a Memorial Gym, I think. I may not get that right. But there are various, you see the word memorial, you kind of don't really think about it too much. But typically those are monuments to remember, World War II, World War I even, throughout the country's history. So the way that they have honored that in Memorial Coliseum in Kentucky, there's a number of ways. One is there was a engineering professor at UK. University of Kentucky, for those that should know what UK means. But anyway, he hand wrote those almost 10,000 names in calligraphy on these big sheets of paper that originally were mounted in glass cases on the stairways that went up to the concourses. Those have recently been removed because they were starting to really deteriorate. They were fading. There was some water damage just from moisture in the air. So those have been put safely into the university archives. What they replaced those with was they put those outside on these stone pillars and on like little bronze nameplates for all of those names. So those have been transferred to the outside. So all those names are there. People can go outside and look at them, and they're there by county. Kentucky has 120 counties, and every county is represented by a number of names, and those are folks that gave their life. Another thing that they did, and those are still there, they did a bronze star. There's over 300 of those. Everybody who was a UK, these are from World War II only, they were either a UK student, a professor, or they worked in some capacity at the university. They put their names and the dates that they were involved with UK on these bronze stars. Those originally were mounted on the walkways inside the arena. And those have been they've been taken off the walls because they were redone through this recent renovation, and they were put high up on up on the lobby wall. So those are still there. And then a third way is there is a tribute in stone at the entrance, the main entrance to the Coliseum. And part of that is taken from a one stanza from a poem called For the Fallen. And that was a well-known poem back in the early part of the century that was originally written in tribute to World War I British soldiers. It was a well-known poem at the time that was done. It was used a lot at ceremonies for war dead up to even World War II. So that is another way that is chiseled in stone outside the arena as you come in. So those things are still there. So it's very much a part, physically a part of Memorial Coliseum.
For those that may not be familiar, can you just go over the relationship between Memorial Coliseum and just the world of Kentucky basketball and how semiotic both of those are, and how important this arena is to just the history of this Kentucky basketball as a whole?
Absolutely. So originally, from about 1925, UK basketball started to come into its heyday. And they played at what would be considered now a small gymnasium. It's called Alumni Gym. It's still there. That seated about, on a good day, about anywhere from 2,500 to 3,000 people. Adolph Rupp came 5 years later. So when he first started coaching at Kentucky in 1930, he was at he was at Alumni Gym. Now, he really got the program rolling, and they won a couple of NCAA championships in the late 40s. So by the late 40s, they were still at Alumni Gym, but they weren't playing there that much. It was too small. Matter of fact, in its last few years, only the students could go to the games on campus, and only half of the students at a time. The enrollment had increased a lot after World War II with the GI Bill, so they had they couldn't even fit even all the students at one time. So for a number of years, they've been looking for a bigger gym. The university didn't have the money. It's a relatively poor state at that time, kind of post-depression. They had a lot of ideas, just didn't have the money to build something. With World War II, sort of a bunch of things came together. One was the idea to make a state memorial for the Kentucky war dead of World War II, and also make it a sort of public use auditorium as well as a home for basketball. Now, Adolph Rupp wanted as big as possible. From all the evidence, he wanted to seat about 15,000. The administration kind of got cold feet, didn't know if they could fill that many seats, so they kept it to about 11,500. With standing room, they could get to a couple thousand more. But Adolph Rupp never thought it was big enough. They had seating on three sides and not on the fourth side. They could put some temporary in there. So it really fulfilled what they had been trying to do for 15 years. So that's the place where the program, if it could even take off more, it even took off more because now it had a home venue campus. They started something called the UKIT, which was the University of Kentucky Invitational Tournament. And they would bring in three other schools, which are usually highly ranked, top 10 schools. And that initially was a very major national tournament at Christmas time. that they would have every year in the Coliseum. The place was very loud. It was always sold out. A lot of times they'd have students sitting in the aisles, even along the floor, and it was very intimidating. And they brought over a winning streak that started in Alumni Gym. And I think they had, I forget the exact number, about 84 straight wins. When they moved into Memorial Coliseum, and they kept that going for another 5 years. They did not lose until they'd won 129 straight home games. And that is still the record. Nobody's really come close to that. The funny thing is, when they eventually lost, it was to Georgia Tech, which at the time was a bottom feeder. The only two league games they lost that year in 1955, if I recall correctly, was to Georgia Tech, which is kind of at the bottom of the league. So it streaks in sometimes that you wouldn't have predicted that one.
I mean, that's the magic of sports. You never know what's
Yes,
going to happen.
and it was on like a last-second shot that they did lose that winning streak. So
incredible.
Yes.
I wonder if there's any video that exists of that already.
Someone's got it. I've tried to scrounge up what I can. In the book, there's a page on that, and it's basically a picture from a student newspaper of Georgia Tech celebrating.
Gotcha.
So I would like to have that video, definitely.
Yeah, that's very historical, I think, to the world of basketball. When readers pick up this book, what is the impression that you want them to have when they finish it? What's kind of the things that you want them to stick in their minds, you think?
Well, what the publisher is Acclaim Press, and they made this a heavy book. It's the color pictures are in color. There's some of their black and white historical pictures, but I think it'll give them a taste of the Coliseum. When they did this renovation last year, they changed. I should say this: they changed it because they really had to. Starting some cases, you could really see the plaster falling off, but it had the original seats in there. They had the original wooden seats. They had a lot of the original fixtures, which is sort of Art Deco, like the signage that would point you to this section or out to this street. They were these beautiful signs. It's really a work of art and the craftsmanship. So some of that had to be changed. The seating, is replaced now by all blue. The plastic seats are very nice. They're very nice to sit in. They're just, they're not the original wooden, uncomfortable seats. So the old timers who remember that, or those younger who see what is there now and don't know what it was like before, they get a taste of all of that. There's many pictures. I went through and took pictures beyond just the history to document what this arena looked like all through it and on the outside before the renovation, and they can see after the renovation as well. So I think that's part of that. It gives them an appreciation for the past and the future. Another thing I'm very proud of is that there is a section where I contacted former players, coaches, just fans, and asked them, give me your memories of it. And so there are fairly, short memories of things that I shared about Moses Malone, things like that people share. So there's a whole section on that where you can, every memory is very special. And I appreciate you letting me share mine to people. And I think that comes through. People remember different things, it wasn't just for basketball as a concert. Person, wrote about it, they never went to a basketball game, but they went to Peter, Paul and Mary concert. And then they were like 12 years old, and they and a friend went, underneath where they weren't supposed to go, back to the dressing areas, and got autographs from Peter and Paul. So just things like that I think, add a real flavor and a personal touch to the book.
A final question for you. Were there any surprises? So when it was all said and done, was there anything that made it in the book that shocked you, that was not in your original planning, but when you were going through your research, it had to be in there, you think?
Well, there's a lot of little things. I guess one thing that's kind of interesting to me, and this would be maybe a surprise, was Dan Issel had shared with me a story where back in his day, which is like from late 60s up to 1970, he would have friends that didn't have a ticket to get in. So what he and some of his teammates would do, they would open up a back door and look out for coaches or any security, and they would let their friends in. Then their friends would have to hide in a phone booth. Back, we used to have things called phone booths for you youngsters. You could make a phone call from, and they would hide in there until the general doors were open and the fans started to come in, and they could just sort of materialize out of the booth and join the fans and not have to have a ticket. So I just always thought that was interesting, and I was always kind of sad that the phone booths seem to have been taken out over the years. You don't need phone booths anymore. Well, come to find out, during the renovation, Mitch Barnhart, the athletic director, one of the things that he shared with the media was that when they took out a sort of a false wall, lo and behold, here are these phone booths still in there. So now they removed the phone booths, and I don't know if they still have those. As soon as he said that, I thought, man alive, that's where Dan Issel used to hide his buddies. So that was kind of a link, and a surprising link from the past to the present renovation for me.
Kevin, thank you very much for the time. Truly appreciate it. Can you let our audience know where they can find you on social media, any upcoming projects, and anything else you want our audience to be aware of as well?
Well, I should have social media. I don't. Where you can find this book is anywhere on Amazon, or through acclaimpress.com, through Barnes & Noble. If you live in Lexington, it's at the local bookstores. A previous book is also out there. It's called House of Champions, and that's the history of all the UK arenas. And I'd say the future one I'm working on is a book for 8 years. Adolph Rupp and Bear Bryant coached together at UK. Bear Bryant, obviously, for football, is our greatest era of UK football history extended. And so I'm looking at that history and researching. I'd like to do a book on that period for both of what I consider two of the greatest coaches in college history.
No, totally agree. Kevin, thank you very much for the time. Truly appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. Take care.
And that should do it for us today. On behalf of Matt, Justin, and Alan, this is Tim Kittrow saying we'll see you next time. Kaboom!